All right, guys, welcome into the Alabama postgame show brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. I'm your host, Simone Eli, alongside Wes Signer with AL.com. We're talking all things Tide 1-0 after week one of the season. Wes, a pretty dominant win, exactly kind of what we expected from Alabama against Utah State. Kind of what's your initial reaction after you saw this win, 55-0, the final from Bryant-Denny just a few minutes ago?
Yeah, I mean, obviously really impressive. Bryce Young seemed to be on it, from the beginning of the game. He 300 yards of total offense, 6 touchdowns. Yep. I think he threw 5 touchdowns in the first half, and I believe they said that he rushed for more yards in this game than he did all last season. So, obviously Alabama had their way with Utah State, I would think, tonight. Defensively, they were all over the field, and really Utah State just never got any kind of momentum at any point. It didn't seem like.
Yeah, and we kind of were expecting that. We kind of knew that Utah State was obviously an inferior opponent to the number 1 ranked Alabama team coming into the season. But I feel like Bryce Young was not only as good as advertised, as good as we knew he was going to be from his Heisman campaign and Heisman winning a year from a year ago, but even better. I mean, his swagger, his ability to run the football when needed, his ability to command the offense like we saw last year, and not really knowing what to expect coming off of the national championship loss a year ago. So this performance 1 week away from Texas makes you feel pretty good.
Oh, yeah, I would think so. I mean, obviously, it's hard not to kind of look ahead to that week 2 game against Texas. Everybody's looking forward to that game. And so it was nice to see him operating, all systems go for Bryce Young, pretty much, I would say.
No question.
And the whole offense, there were some newcomers, especially at receiver, that were, equally good tonight in terms of being able to haul in some of these passes that Bryce Young was throwing. Holden and Burton and those guys. It was just kind of nice to see some of these newer receivers and kind of see how they're meshing with the offense and Bryce Young and everything. So I was just just real quick, I was just impressed with Bryce running the ball, especially on that long run that he had. I think it was like a 63-yarder where he, goes down the sideline and then was able to cut midfield and kind of turn the Jets on. I know he doesn't get a lot of credit for his running ability, but just really impressive tonight, I think.
Totally agree. If you're just tuning in, no doubt. If you're just tuning in, this is the Alabama postgame show brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. We appreciate your comments here. Kevin Bean saying that Bama made a statement. They certainly did. A great showing there at home with a 55-0 win over Utah State. You mentioned a moment ago this receiving core, and Bryce Young had said this week that this offseason work that they have put in, the amount of reps that he has gotten with these guys has made him incredibly comfortable with what they have been able to establish. And if you look at Trayshawn Holden, 2 receiving touchdowns, Jermaine Burton, 2 receiving touchdowns, Jason McClellan, obviously a guy returner, 2 receiving touchdowns. Burton, just one of those guys, one of these transfer portal guys that has just totally paid off, and just goes to show what teams can pick up in the transfer portal, just like we saw a year ago as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And, we haven't mentioned Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back, which we weren't able to see as much of him as I would have thought tonight. Bryce was kind of dominant in terms of the running game. So I think it would have been nice to see some more of Gibbs, because I know a lot of fans are excited about him and just to see what he can do. So that was really the only thing that I would say, that I was hoping to see more of from Alabama, is just maybe more from the running game. But, if it's not broke, you don't fix it. And they were in control of this game for the whole thing. So
I think that Nick Saban knows that establishing the run is going to be necessary to win in the SEC. But when you have an arm like you do in Bryce Young and the success that he's having with 5, passing touchdowns and then 1 on the ground, it's hard. Like you said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They certainly did not. Lisa is right. Bryce is the GOAT until he's no longer the GOAT. Obviously, he's the returning king of college football. Defensively, I felt like Alabama really clicked on all cylinders. Obviously, they were rotating some guys in different positions at corner, and but it just seemed like whoever was there, Wes, was getting it done. And that's just that makes you feel good kind of regardless. You can see the celebration pictures here from the offense, but really just on both sides of the ball, Alabama getting it done. Here's a great defensive play by Will Anderson Jr. I mean, that guy is just so dominant and just truly unstoppable.
Yeah, it's a good shot here. This is Clay Yeager. We sent him to the game, so we'll have more highlights and stuff on AL.com later, from this game. But yeah, I mean, again, just Alabama's in control of this game from the get-go, and it was just all around. I don't know really if there's any bad, anything bad you can say about their performance overall. So,
yes. No question. And when you have a well-oiled machine, which is what this team appears to be right now, I mean, it's scary. The rest of the SEC is watching that. I mean, yes, it's Utah State, but they know there's a reason that this team is the number one ranked preseason number one team. So Alabama rolling so far. I think everything that Nick Saban said coming into this game, I mean, we'll see what everybody has to say here in the post-game show. Obviously, there's always something that coach is, wants to nitpick at necessarily. I mean, maybe towards the end, Wes, if I had to say something, the younger guys, always always want to see those guys get reps in and get some game time experience. Other than that, I mean, I don't really know what there is to say other than this was a nearly perfect game for the starters and the guys that play meaningful snaps.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, once you get that far ahead, it's nice to see some of those other guys get some reps. And Ty Simpson came in late in the game. Yeah, I think he's kind of like going to be the future guy, down the road. So it's nice to get a little bit of glimpse of that.
Yep.
I'm curious to see what Saban will say in this press conference, and we'll have that up at AL.com too for you guys to watch, just to see if there's anything that was kind of irking him throughout the game. Because even at the end of the game, you can see him, he's still just like all business. He's up 55-0 with a few seconds left, and he's irritated about something.
Of course, but that's what makes him the best of what he does. Of course, is having the high expectations, not only for the guys number one on the depth chart, but also all the way down, and that's what makes him as good as he is. Looking ahead, just for Alabama, I think we got a comment a minute ago. Texas is not going to be a cakewalk. I mean, listen, when you're playing against any coach who is familiar with your program, the way that it's run, kind of the psyche of Alabama, like Steve Sarkisian, who's the head coach of Texas, is there's always something positive for the opponent in that regard. In my opinion, Wes, we obviously seen Kirby Smart successful against Alabama. We've seen Jimbo Fisher successful against Alabama. And I could see Steve Sarkisian turning Texas at some point into one of those higher caliber teams, especially if he can get it going on offense.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You mentioned those two games last year. Saban had this streak of all these wins against his assistants. He'd never been beaten, and then it happened twice last year with Jimbo and Kirby. So here's another opportunity for a former assistant to face off with Saban.
Sure.
Personally, I don't, just based on the way that they played tonight, I would have to take Alabama in that game. I'm not sure what the odds are, the early odds for that game, but I would be surprised if Texas is able to pull off what would be a massive upset. I don't think that's going to happen next week.
It definitely would. It will be Alabama's first game on the road. Then the Tide will return home to host Louisa Monroe and then to start SEC play against Vanderbilt. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's a fluff schedule in the month of September, Wes, but it's a fluff schedule in the month of September.
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, based on what we saw tonight, I think Alabama fans should be pretty happy about the performance and the outlook for September, and just the near future of these games coming up. I think they're in good shape right now. No injuries or anything like that from tonight that I saw. So that's always good too.
Looking just around college football really, really quickly, if I can get this pulled up, it looked like up north, Ohio State beat Notre Dame. Last I checked, Auburn was in a delay still on the Plains, that lightning delay. They were up 35-7 in the third when that went into a delay. Arkansas beat Cincinnati 31-24. Georgia, just briefly on Georgia, I mean, absolutely dominated Oregon. And you start to wonder, I mean, do we really want a 12-team college football playoff when number 11 ranked Oregon loses 49-3 to open the season?
Yeah, if the playoffs had started today, that Oregon would be a playoff team.
That's what I'm saying. 11, And
I'm all for expanding the playoff. I think it makes it more fun. But maybe 8, I think, is the perfect number.
Yeah, I like that too. Bo Nix, I mean, obviously he's just somebody that people in this state are used to talking about and things. I saw a tweet that said he was just born to lose to Georgia. So
0-4 for Bo Nix against Georgia. Couldn't figure that out, and this was the worst loss by far.
Yeah, no doubt.
He had some closer games against Georgia at Auburn, but dominating performance from Georgia today. So that's interesting too.
Yes, I know Bama fans always want to keep an eye on the whole national scope, regardless of Utah State being the game. Always trying to dial in and see what it's going to look like down the road should the Tide get into the playoffs, which, judging by tonight, very likely to happen. Wes, any final comments before we close things down?
No, I'm just just wanted to thank everybody for tuning in, and obviously it's a little different this year with me on the show, but we're going to have a rotating cast of characters for Simone to speak to. We got a lot of reporters and some good some good people, better than me on camera.
You're great.
I know you talked to Mike Rodak, our beat writer, this morning, and we'll
Yep.
have Michael Casagrande on here and John Talty and the whole crew at AL.com. So looking forward to a good season.
Certainly some of the best with those guys. We're looking forward to joining y'all at 9 a.m. next week as we will preview the Texas game. That's an 11 o'clock kickoff. Not everyone's thrilled about that, but y'all wake up, get some coffee, get some bacon and pancakes, and get ready to watch some football early Saturday as the Tide take on the Longhorns. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the Alabama Postgame Show, brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. He's Wes, I'm Simone, and we will see y'all next week. Have a
Medical Properties Trust, at the very heart of healthcare.